Hello and welcome to the 27th episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. After a great reaction to last week's pod and Huw's mini documentary on Tyburn, if you haven't watched it, please check it out. We're now approaching 700 YouTube subscribers, so a huge thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you like what we do, please like, share and subscribe. Comments also give us a big boost and we always respond to each one. If you're only here for Thistle the Cat's shorts, stick around, you might decide you like rugby too.
Thistle didn't actually do a short this weekend. It's the first weekend that he hasn't done one in ages, which is all his fans will be disappointed. All the people who are only subscribed for that will be gutted. He didn't do anything rugby related this weekend. That's not true. During the first half of Scotland versus France, he was sick on the carpet. So
lovely.
Yeah, so I had to clean that up. So don't quiz me too hard on that one. Anyway, we now have a link tree. So a link tree is like a basic website where you can go and find all the links for everything. So in the description this weekend, this will be on the audio and on the YouTube rather than a whole big list of links. There'll be one link there. You can click on that and you can find us on every platform, basically, whatever you want to see. You can find it Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, or Substack. All these platforms have grown a lot over the past week, so make sure you don't miss out. We only need 2 more Substack followers to reach the big 50, the big 50, which we really want to do. This weekend, we dropped an article about the top 5 fan ideas that rugby should copy from football. And as a hint, one of them is transfer windows. So if you want to read more about that, hit the link in the link tree and read it now. No guests again this week. We were very nervous last week about not having a guest. We thought no one would care. We thought we were relying on the cachet of our guests, bringing in the eyes and the ears. But the numbers were pretty good, so we're quite happy about that. So thank you, everybody. Let's get into the moments of the week. Enda, what was your moment of the week?
I picked one that probably all of our listeners and viewers have, seen a clip of and have heard or whatnot, and it was Amy Barrett as referee in the under-20 Six Nations game between England and Wales, where she pulled the 2 captains aside. It's really funny, but she did, make a statement that she was not mad. She was just disappointed and asking the players if they had lied to her before the game. And I think that there's been a lot of reaction to this, some positive, some negative online. But for me, and first of all, this is for me nothing to do with Amy's gender or anything like that. I think this is exactly how players should be treated if the ref feels like things are getting, out of control. I think it's very popular at the moment to say that, hashtag rugby values are dead and that we should almost be embarrassed about certain values in our game. But, and again, the Super Bowl was on over the weekend, and, people love comparing rugby to American football and how that's, where the game should go in order to succeed and whatnot. But my view of a lot of these things is that we should actually just celebrate what makes rugby different. And for me, one of those things is how we treat refs and how they're spoken to and how they're respected. Of course, it's an area that isn't perfect at the moment. We all know that there's a lot of back chat and everything. And we've all seen the whistleblowers documentaries. So we know how much pressure's on referees and how much abuse they're getting. But I started playing rugby when I was 8 years old. I played for 14 years, and it was always one of the values genuinely that was there was respect for the referee. You never spoke back to them, and you gave them the utmost respect before, during, and after the game. And I just think it's something we shouldn't shy away from, especially when you compare how other sports treat their referees, and particularly players. I think that's the big one for me, how referees are treated by the players on the pitch. A lot of the noise around the abuse that refs are getting at the moment is from fans, or, well, you can't really call them fans if they're treating refs like that, can you? But it's, for me, I think it's really important that we maintain that players treat them with the utmost respect as well. And then that in turn will influence fans out there. A bit of a long one for me, but what about yourself, mate?
I had no issue with the incident. I thought it was, firstly, it works. There was no more nonsense for the rest of the game. And I think people have to remember just how childish sport is as a thing. It's literally called playing a game. That's literally what we say. And this was an under-20s match. And there was a tete-a-tete between the 2 players. There was handbags is something that people call it sometimes. It was, the whole thing is childish. Everything about it is childish. So for the referee to speak to the players as children when they have done something childish, I don't have any issue with it at all. And so, they talk about, oh, you can't talk to players like that. Oh, calm down. And I think it's good refereeing. Like I say, it worked. They cut out the nonsense immediately. I'm saying all this. I also have no problem with a bit of argy-bargy in a game between England and Wales. I'm kind of disappointed when it doesn't happen, to be honest. So all round, it's just a game of rugby. So everyone calm down. Right. My moment of the week was on Twitter, another Twitter moment from me. So I speculated publicly about the Twickenham factor. How many points is playing at Twickenham actually worth to England? And I put out there, I said, I think 12. I think England gets 12 points just from being at Twickenham. And they have a 12-point head start. And, a couple of people replied saying, oh, I think this, I think that. And then one guy replied, and I don't have it. I'll have to check his name. Hang on. One guy replied and said, I am doing my masters on the difference in score lines between home and away fixtures. And I've been looking at Six Nations rugby, and it turns out that on average, England's advantage over their opponents is 12.1 points better at Twickenham. So 12 is correct. So there you go. Masters level academic research proved that my theory off the top of my head was exactly correct. So thank you very much to Dylan Holmes, and good luck with your masters. Make sure you put all your effort into your lit review for helping us out with that. Anyway, that's enough of the moments of the week. Let's get into the news. So the Dupont Law is top of the agenda at the moment in rugby. So you spotted something about Super Rugby where it's slightly different, didn't you?
Yeah, so Super Rugby, it's right around the corner. We know it's starting not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. And it seems like, their administrators have acted quickly and they've removed this essential, what is it, a loophole you call it? Known as the Dupont Law, where basically players, when there is a bit of kick tennis going on, certain players just stay in the middle of the field. It's frustrating to watch, I think, at times. But what I loved most, and you probably didn't get to experience this because you're watching from the UK, but what we saw a lot of this in the weekend. It was a huge criticism of a lot of the games, especially in the Scotland game as well. And watching on RTE television, it was brilliant. It was so refreshing because a lot of the times when kick tennis does happen, a lot of the commentators just simply complain and talk about literally how boring the game is that they're watching is. But Jerry Flannery did the opposite, and he actually just did what we always advocate on here, which is just maybe just explain what the teams are doing and why they're doing it, and how, talking about the various different styles of kick, what they're trying to do, where they're trying to kick the ball. And it was just so refreshing to see him do that, because not enough commentators do that. And he's going to be a big loss to television here when he moves to South Africa to become defense coach. But just a side note on that law. But I just think it's so easy, as we've said before, to be highly critical of this. It is boring. It is great to see Super Rugby do something about it, but there is also skill there. There is something that teams are trying to do, and if we understand it a bit more instead of just complaining about it, maybe we'll enjoy the games that bit more too. But look, Super Rugby have gotten rid of it. I'm sure we won't be far behind here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Should encourage. It's very Super Rugby because it should encourage counter-attacking. So we spoke about this a bit on the Scoop pod, where say you get rid of it. So in order for the entire defense to be onside, someone who was either the kicker or behind the kicker needs to overtake the entire team. So that means it's more likely that someone could counterattack and run past people who aren't allowed to tackle them because they're offside. Similarly, it will make the defenders in the middle have to run back and forward a lot to get onside. So it will tire them out. So I kind of, having thought about it, it would encourage, I think, counter-attacking rugby if you got rid of it. The only thing is, the thing that Finn Russell's been doing to make fun of it is he's been standing there and just putting his hands on his hips and waiting, because he knows that as long as he doesn't move 5 meters, people can't come towards it. He could still theoretically do that if the team that kicks the ball doesn't chase and everyone just stands still. Finn could stand there and not move, and the game would essentially be paused. But there would be no point in doing it, and the risk of him counterattacking, I think, would always cause the kicking team to chase. So I think I think getting rid of it, I would be in favour of that. Although, just on the thing about pundits complaining about the kicking all the time, we saw in the Scotland match that they started booing. The crowd started booing the kicking. I think that the only reason that has happened is because they have been told that it's bad. I think if everyone did what Jerry Flannery did and explained why it's important and what's trying to be happened, people wouldn't boo. I think because you got, the usual suspects in the media trying to explain why it's so terrible, that's why people boo, because they've just been told and told and told and told that it's bad. So again, this is rugby pundits, in my opinion, doing a disservice to the sport.
Yeah, and again, kind of linked to that as well, it goes back to my point on referees as well. And I think, fans are really easily influenced. And I think if fans see players treating refs with respect, and that'll then be reciprocated. So I just think, that's kind of linked to that in a way. Let's move on. There's some news in Wales. I'll let you take this one.
There's always news in Wales.
There's some interesting things going on, right?
Yeah, so we like to cover the Welsh Premiership a little bit on this pod. We talk about it in this, and we also talk about it in the mini pod on the Friday breakfast show, because there's often midweek rugby. So it's the only thing that we can watch here in the UK is a bit of Welsh Premiership, and I've been really enjoying it. So it's all set for a change. So what has happened is they've decided, and I think fairly, that the gap between the Welsh Premiership and the regions in the URC is too great, and they need to reform it. And also the Welsh Premiership is not doing what people wanted to do and bringing through young Welsh talent that are ready to then go and play for the regions. So they're now reforming it, and they're bringing in what they're calling the elite domestic competition, something like that. It's like a new thing to sit between the URC and the Welsh Prem, and it will be mostly made up of young players, but it's going to be made up of Welsh Premiership teams. So Llandovery, Carmarthen Quins, all that are going to go into it, and they will no longer be in the Premiership. So it's a huge change. And currently the Welsh Premiership is under the Community Game Board, so it's essentially the amateur structure, and the new EDC will be part of the Professional Game Board. So it's all part of the whole big reform with the WRU and everything. It's all part of that. It's probably a good thing that it's happening, but there's a lot of misinformation going around about it, and it's in some sections of Welsh Rugby Twitter, which we know and love, it's getting absolute pelters. But that's because I think people have wrong expectations of what it's going to be. So it's for me, it's pretty clear that it's primarily a development tournament. So the Welsh Prem, from as much as we love it, is not like a massively popular product. It's not like everybody watches the Welsh Prem and everyone has a Welsh Prem team. I'm sure a lot of people would say that they do, but the fact is the viewing figures and the attendance in the crowd it's like the best attended Welsh Prem teams are like a third of what the lowest region gets. But I don't have the exact figures, but it's along those lines. So they've said, okay, well, it's not like a fan product, so let's make it into a development thing. So they're doing that. And in terms of development, this new version is right on track. It's very similar to what's around the world, like NPC and Curry Cup and the Super Series in Scotland and things like that, all the stuff that we cover on this pod. And as part of that, so this league is going to be September to December, and then there's going to be a break, and then there's going to be a cup competition after the Six Nations. So people are saying, oh, well, this isn't what we want, because a league should be from August to May or September to March or whatever it is. That's a proper league. So this is rubbish. And I'm like, guys, this is, again, us being used to what we are used to, and, getting influenced by like the football model that everyone in the UK is so used to, of having a long season. Around the world in other sports, seasons aren't that long. So like a 3-4 month season is pretty normal. All else around the world, like in the Southern Hemisphere rugby especially, and in loads of other sports, that's how long it is. The break in between is because of the under-20 Six Nations, and they want the players who are playing in this EDC to be available for the under-20 Six Nations, so they don't want to clash there. That's why it's done the way it's done. So I just wanted to put that out there. So it's a big change, obviously, for a competition that we like to cover on this pod, and I just wanted to address a lot of the misinformation that is going around about it. And I think people have it in the head that this is a revamp of the Welsh Prem, and it's not. It's something different, and it's above that. Anyway, right. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's talk about the last bit of news before we go into the actual rugby matches. So we spoke about the Scotland game earlier. There was obviously a controversial end to that game that has provoked a lot of a debate. And it has come out today that Scotland are seeking an admission from World Rugby that the officials got it wrong. So I'm going to read here from a BBC Sport article. There was a feeling, this is from a source, an unnamed source in the SRU, there's a feeling that rugby is been made to look complex and stupid in those final moments. Basically the gist of this comment from the SRU, or an unnamed source at the SRU, is that rugby's trying to attract new fans, and if you do things like this, it doesn't attract new fans. And so they're seeking an official feedback from the World Rugby to say, yeah, we got it wrong and Scotland should have won the match. What's your take on the whole situation? And we don't like to do ref chat on this pod, but obviously this has given us the SRU's comment has given us a slightly different angle to talk about it. Do you think the decision was wrong? Can you understand how it was reached, and do you have sympathy for the SRU here?
I certainly have sympathy for the SRU. I can only imagine watching that unfold as an Irish fan, especially against France at home. But the referee followed the process, and so did the TMO. So I have absolutely no issue with the ref. The ref did exactly what he's supposed to do. He couldn't see a grounding, so he made that decision, and then he went to the TMO just to confirm that there was no evidence there to overturn it. Obviously, the argument comes down then to whether or not there was sufficient evidence, and whether or not they could see the line, whether or not it was grounded. I think we all know that it was more than likely grounded. Yes, but none of us can see the line in that image that everyone's sharing on social media. So that's the issue there. But it's incredibly frustrating. It is what it is. It is what it is. And I feel like if we could easily take that power away from refs, and it could just, but I think a lot of this debate comes down to, do we give the referees that, the ultimate say, or not even the ultimate say, just, I don't know, the upper hand in these decisions, or where they're leading it, where they're holding the pen, where they're, ultimately making that call and asking the TMO maybe just to reaffirm or to overturn their decision, instead of just going, the ball's over the line, ref has nothing to do, he's not going to try get in there, he or she is not going to try get in there and have a look, he's just going to go straight upstairs. So it's clear, I think, that refs maybe want to hold on to that, and don't want to give away that power, I guess, or that decision-making capability. But it has led to, I think, probably an unfair result. But again, that there's nothing on the, for me, Nick Berry did everything right. He followed the process. He didn't see a grounding. So on-field decision was no try, and he went upstairs and to see if there was evidence to overturn his decision. I don't know. What's your take? I can see, I would be completely happy with the game, maybe getting rid of this, but I think it's dangerous when you start to do, like, do you remember we had those trials in Super Rugby where the captain's challenge and all that nonsense? Yeah. That was a complete disaster. We see forward passes in games. We see plenty of should be penalties at ruck time, but the refs maybe let the game flow, or they don't see it because it's impossible to ref rugby. So I'm not sure what we should do here. Should we just leave it the way it is, or should we change it? But I just think it's dangerous to change all of these, to make all of these changes really without just taking all that power away from the ref. I don't know. What's your take on
well, I think you can't know what it's like to be in that position until you've been in that position. And it was in overtime a try to change the result of the game at home for the home team. And the referee had made the decision saying, for me, it's a no try. Can you find any evidence to overturn it? And, the way that you can interpret that is, I have to be 100% certain that there is clear and obvious evidence to overturn it. And if the TMO in that moment said, I could be 90% there, but I'm not 100% there, then that's up to him. So I can completely see it. I'm happy that the process was followed. I disagree with the SRU assertion that it was confusing or made no sense. I think the referees are very good at explaining their process out loud, and they make, you often hear, like Wayne Barnes always used to say, okay, bring the camera back on me. And then he would explain it very clearly, and he would make hand gestures and things to make it as clear as he could. So I think referees are very good at making sure that the decisions are clear. And I don't think it's a great look for the SRU really to be banging on about it. Gregor Townsend made a big, well, not a big fuss, but made it somewhat of a fuss after the Wales game where Scotland conceded 16 penalties, Wales conceded 4, and he wasn't happy with the referee about that. You lost, Gregor. I'm sorry about that. But I don't know. Finn Russell, to be fair to him, came out after the game and said, we can't leave it up to the referee to be making the game-changing decisions like that. Scotland had more than ample opportunity to win that game, and they didn't. So, the fact that Scotland were trailing going into overtime was Scotland's fault. It wasn't the referee's fault. So I just think that's the game. Shake hands, move on. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Agreed, mate. Shall we move on to a review of all the games? So, let's maybe start with that Scotland game, since we've already kind of touched on it. What did you make of this game? Where you, like a lot of people, there's a lot of negativity around this weekend. I think I've seen a good few people make comments that they're actually quite glad that there's no Six Nations action coming up this weekend, because it was, the quality of the games was maybe certainly not up to the first round standards. But what was your overall take on that game?
People don't mean that. People love the Six Nations. They'll watch it. It was okay. Like, I didn't catch much of the first half due to the whole cat sick thing. But yeah, it was tense. I mean, it was exciting in that you didn't know which way the result was going to go. I don't think either team played to their potential. I think Scotland are definitely trying to evolve. They were the Jouet team for a bit and they were just chucking it about. I think they've maybe taken a few lessons from the World Cup and constantly getting beaten by the likes of Ireland and South Africa, and they're trying to take some lessons from that. So they are becoming a more kicking team. If you look at the kicking stats, Scotland kick the most out of any of the home nations now. Finn Russell is bossing the game from his boots, and to be fair, his kicking from hand has been excellent for some time now. And his goal kicking is I think he's 100% from the tee as well. There's Six Nations, and he's the only kicker to be 100%. So, yeah, maybe it wasn't the most thrilling. Maybe it was one for the purists, you could say. I think France is still a big disappointment. They feel like they're really playing below their ceiling at the moment. And a lot of people are pinning that on Luku and Jalibert. I don't think that's fair. I think Fickou was really good in this game. Fickou was back to his best, but I think Domty has been somewhat anonymous to a degree. Penaud hasn't been his outrageous self. Ramos, I think they're all just a bit off it. I don't know whether it's a mental thing. They just don't.
Is it that World Cup hangover potentially? Like we did question how they were going to react, and it's been poor, hasn't it? Like it's been a poor reaction.
Their mojo. They definitely lost their mojo. But what do you think this result says about Scotland? I'm not going to do my Scotland bashing, but the hype train left the station week 1 and has come to a halt already. Some of our favourite people in the Irish media made some comments after the last game. Do you think they were proven all right?
Yeah, Ian Madigan was getting an awful lot of stick online for quoting that, stating that Scotland are fragile. And I think people maybe took that a bit to heart too much. Like, I think he's entitled to his opinion, and it is what it is. I don't think he was having. He was saying that he questioned whether or not they have it in them, and I think the weekend probably proved him right. Like they had opportunities to win that game, and they didn't take them. And as you said, Russell brought it up at the end of the game. They shouldn't have been in that situation towards the end of the game where they're relying on that decision from the TMO and the ref. So I just think, for me, Scotland, I think you're right. It's a more mature game plan. They are kicking the ball more. They're taking less risks. I'm happy enough with their defense. I think it's doing quite well. I think they have some absolute superstars, but I just feel that that they need to take it to that next level. And I've said it numerous times previously. I honestly think Scotland can beat any of the best teams in the world on their day, but then they can go out the next weekend and lose, to a lesser team. And I just think that that's their issue, and they need to just keep going in the right direction and keep trying to figure it out. It would have been a massive result for them if they had beaten France at home in front of a great home crowd. I love listening to Power Scotland before the game, especially when the bagpipe player on top of the stadium stops playing and lets the crowd finish the anthem. It's just, it's special, isn't it? So yeah, disappointing, but I think they're going in the right direction. I think, and I think Russell is leading that charge. Like everyone's talking about him since the documentary, but he is backing it up. To be fair, with some very good performances. But I think for me, from this game, what stands out probably is just France and how much they're missing Dupont. Like, it's such a simple thing to say. I said the same thing last week, but it's obvious, isn't it? Like, they're almost lacking that spark without him. And yeah, I wonder if this is it for Galti. I wonder, is this like, did we see the peak of France for this current crop of players? I know it's an outrageous statement, probably, or a question to ask, but is that it? Is it going to be downhill from here? The defense isn't where it was. I don't know. Like, and Aldrit now, it seems like he picked up a pretty innocuous injury, but looks like a nasty one. So he's going to be a big loss. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Obviously, they could bounce back. It's 2 games in the bounce now where they've been poor.
Yeah, I just want to shout out Scottish player Rory Darge as well. Was the top tackler and carrier for Scotland in this game, and I think of the home nations, he got the most carries of any player. He's also, get the stat right, so gain line success. So he's made 15 carries into contact, and he's got 73% gain line success, which is very good. It's up there with the top guys. If you check out the stats, like Gregory Audrey's got 71% gain line success from his 21 carries. So hell of a opening 2 games from him, and it's good to see these URC players, maybe lesser known ones, really step up and shine. So he's the kind of player that doesn't get much hype, especially outside Scotland. So I just wanted to make sure that he got his moment there. Let's talk about Ireland versus Italy, the Sunday game, the game that we always say is always slightly and is always the Sunday game, as David from Scum of the Earth pointed out to us. It felt like Ireland were kind of playing this one in their slippers to me a bit.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time analyzing this game really, or talking about it, because it was for me, it was a foregone conclusion before the game. Like, I think Ireland have, they're in fantastic form. It seems like that game against New Zealand was just a minor blip, and people love bashing Ireland and saying how we crashed out at a quarter final again. But like, people also forget that Ireland played really well in that game, and it was very close. And they were beaten probably by the better side on the day. But Ireland also went on to, previously had beaten South Africa in that same competition. So I just think, Ireland have picked up from where they left off before that game, and they're playing really well. We all saw this result coming. I think Italy did quite well to keep it to 36 points. We discussed last week how we see improvements in Italy's game. We all know how well their domestic teams in the URC are doing, which is great to see. But I don't think they really stood a chance against Ireland. And I'm not being disrespectful to Italy. They are improving. They are a good side. I think they do deserve their place in Six Nations. I hope this chat doesn't come up again where people are questioning whether or not they should be in the competition, because I really do feel like they could get a scalp against one of the teams, because I really think England and Wales aren't in a great spot. We did see them only losing by 3 points against England, so how will they do against Wales? Let's see. But yeah, like, the Ireland players, all the usual guys were absolutely fantastic. Crowley seems to have, continued his great form. James Lowe, but it's we all knew they were going to have great games for me, and it was disappointing as a spectacle. And just the final point I wanted to touch on from the Irish game was just the crowd and the atmosphere. There was a lot of chat before the game, mainly driven by an article that was written by Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent, kind of just discussing the lack thereof of an atmosphere at Irish games. And I think Sunday was another example of that. Like, it was like a library at times. But I think a lot of that was just down to this fixture. Unfortunately, as you touched on, it was a foregone conclusion. It wasn't a contest. It wasn't a competitive game. People knew the result before they went there, and I think that kind of led into it. Also, the kickoff time. Also, it was a Sunday. Like, I went to a Leinster game recently when they had their Champions Cup game in the Aviva Stadium against Stade Francais. There were 42,000 at the game, and it was dead. Like, there was no real atmosphere, because again, people knew the Stade Francais came over just to to participate, but not to try compete and win the game. So I think that was quite similar in the Irish game. But I don't know, what were your thoughts overall on the game? Were you a bit bored or?
Yeah, like I say, Ireland in cruise control. I thought, Italy disappointing, to be honest. It makes you reflect, doesn't it, on how hyped, and I feel like that's kind of doing Italy a disservice now, is how much hype that Kieran Crowley's Italy got from some areas, and that some of the players, how much hype they got, and how, they're building, they're going to be this, they're going to be that. And then, the way the World Cup went. And they're clearly a lot better than they were in the World Cup. Like I said last week, they can't get much worse. But they're doing other things, but there's still a softness to them, especially in defence. They still concede really soft tries that they shouldn't. That's just disappointing. And the other thing with Kieran Crowley now is, now that we've seen full contact, we know how much of a bit of a cowboy he was, and some of his assistant coaches as well. Some of the things that they'd come out with, and some of the ways they speak to players. Paolo Garbisi. Now, according to Opta Johnny, Paolo Garbisi was Italy's best player last week and second best player this week. I disagree. I think Paolo Garbisi has been poor in both the opening games. I think he has not been general, like marching his team around the pitch like he should be, like a good 10 should be. He's not a new and inexperienced player now. I don't know whether this is kind of a knock on for him playing for a poor Montpellier side, and he's been playing centre for them. I don't think that's helped him at all. And the rumours of him going to Toulon, apparently he is going there as a centre as well. Now that it remains to be seen.
Yeah, because they've got Dan Bigger.
Yeah, exactly. They got Dan Bigger, and apparently Nathalevu is injured. So apparently he's going there. But even that doesn't make any sense, because Nathalevu is an outside centre and Garbisi is an inside centre. Well, he's not. He's a 10, but he plays as an inside centre. So yeah, because I was very surprised that they didn't bring Tommy Allen on earlier, because I thought he was very good last week against England, and they just felt that they needed to change. And really, especially in the first 15 minutes, Garbisi was really struggling. He was really having a poor game, and I didn't think having Capuozzo a fullback helps them at all. And I'm not sure about. Maybe Allen wasn't 100% fit. I saw him take a knock against England, but I'm just not sure. And like I said, Italy got really hyped at the moment. I think they're a lot better than they were last year. But there's just still an edge that they're lacking. And it's gone back a little bit to that kind of same old Italy of, we'll give you a game for 60 minutes and then you walk over us in the second half. I will say, though, the gap between Ireland and the rest is a little bit frightening at the moment.
That's what everyone's talking about.
They played this game in second gear. James Lowe, the tactic that they've gone like, well, what are the trends in rugby at the moment? Oh, the team that kicks the ball the most meters usually wins. But who have we got in the team who can kick the ball really far? James Lowe. All right, give him the ball and tell him to kick it then. And it's really working. It's like, oh, was it really that easy? Like, he is playing, and to be fair, he looked like he wasn't going to be fit for the Six Nations at one point, and he's been arguably the player of the tournament so far. His stats against Italy were outrageous, and it's not like just ball in hand stats. Like, he made 13 passes as well and 9 kicks. Like, there are fly halves who don't get those numbers. Like, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I think it's scary for everybody else, especially for me, because Wales are playing in Dublin next. But I guess for you as an Ireland fan, it's got to be the best Ireland team that you've ever seen, surely.
Yeah, trying to avoid that debate for now, but they have to be up there, certainly. 1 to 15, they're absolutely outstanding, I think. They're obviously not perfect, and like, one thing you have to call out as well is that the lineup was definitely an issue at the World Cup, and so far, after 2 rounds of Six Nations, Ireland haven't lost a lineup, which is extremely impressive. Obviously, I think it's really popular now to hone in on Andrew Porter, saying that he's always scoring.
I was about to ask you that. Yeah.
Which is quite frustrating at times, especially when you see former players come out and defend him. But I think that comes back to the complexity of the game and how you can interpret scrums. But I do think, that they have to be up there, don't they? I think but also I think that they're just extremely well coached as well.
Oh yeah.
Which has to be factored in. But let's move on to Saturday's other game. That was England v Wales. Are you happy after that? Are Wales developing? Are England going backwards? What are your? I know you want to discuss England's.
Yeah,
attack.
I'll do Wales first. So Wales absolutely definitely developing. So Wales should have lost their first 2 games by more. And if you look at the bookies odds, they were down to. We've never led at halftime in Twickenham during the Six Nations era. And we've never scored a try in the first half in the Six Nations era. We scored 2 and we were led by 9 points. So from that kind of point of view, it's disappointing that we didn't get the victory. And that's 2 games in a row in Twickenham where we've failed to, because in the summer warm-up last season, we took an experimental team to Twickenham up against England's best team there and should have won that game as well. So it's kind of encouraging. And I think it really shows it reflects well on Warren Gatland as well, that he's able to bring these players who have never, some of them are in their first ever pro season, never played international rugby before, and have been getting their asses kicked up and down the URC and in European rugby for the last however many months. And he's brought them together and they've lost 2 Six Nations games by a total of 3 points. So I think it really reflects well on him. I think the back 3 for Wales of Dyer, Adams and Winnett has really begun to look good. Winnett in particular I thought he had a tough first half against Scotland with some of his decision making, some of his kicks, but in this game he looked so comfortable. And I'm looking forward to continuing to see him grow. And I think it's helping him that he's got the vote of confidence from Gatland as well, saying, "You're my 15. Go with it. Go with it." George North made a huge impact coming back into the centres, as I think everybody thought that he would. Tommy Raphael is playing great. He plays for Leicester, did you know? And Alex Mann really repaid the faith that Gatland showed in him by starting at 6 and performing very well. 2 tries in 2 test matches. Hasn't scored a try yet for Cardiff. Two tries in his first 2 games for Wales. So great stuff. Kieran Azarati as well. Feels like I'm naming the whole Wales team. I think the consensus in Wales are the starting 15 all played well. Ioan Lloyd was a bit of a mixed bag, but most of them were all 7 out of 10 or more. It's when the replacements came off the bench that things started to fall away a little bit. And I think that's kind of maybe a lesson for Gatland. He's learning who he can and can't trust. Remember, we are still missing players. You know, Jack Morgan's not there. Derry Lake isn't there. Will Rowlands arguably should still be ahead of Daft Jenkins on ability, even though Daft Jenkins is obviously the captain at the moment. But yeah, so I think it's really encouraging for Wales, and this is still not our final form. England, on the other hand. So the narrative that Steve Borthwick is trying to spin around England is that they are a young team developing. So I did the numbers because that's what I do. England's team was on average a year older than their Welsh counterparts. That's median, by the way. They had on average 20% more elite club games than the Welsh players that they were facing. And they had about twice the number of international caps than the Welsh players they were facing on average. It's not true. They're not a young team. Like, look at the spine that they've got. Jamie George, Ben Earl, okay, is relatively new-ish, I suppose. Alex Mitchell hasn't got that many England caps, but he's got a boatload of Northampton caps. He's not a kid. George Ford, not a young player. Then you got someone like Freddie Stewart at 15, who again has been around for a couple of seasons now, getting loads of game time. And then you got people like Elliot Daly around him. Henry Slade is an extremely experienced player. Then you got people like Joe Marler, Dan Cole, Danny Kerr to come off the bench. It's not a young team. It's not. And the injury news this week has been that Ollie Lawrence and Marnie Tuolangi might be back available. If they come in, if Dingwall is straight out and one of those two comes back in at 12, it's not a new team. It's not a refresh team. The only changes that Borthwick has made, really, is bringing in Ethan Roots, who again is not an inexperienced player. He's new to England, but that's because he's been playing in other countries up until now. He's got Super Rugby experience. He's got URC experience. Sam Underhill was back in after having not made the World Cup squad, but again, he's not inexperienced. So yeah, I'm making the same point over and over again. But the only new guy really will be Tommy Freeman, and one new winger. Wow, it's not a refreshed team. And if you look at, people are desperate to spin the narrative that England are evolving and they're adding to their attack. No, if you look at the stats of how they play, their game plan is still very much without the ball. They kick it away and they let you come at them and they back their defense. Now, it's getting them results, so you can't complain. If I was an England fan, I'd be like, yeah, we won. What are you going to do? And if people want to take this as me being bitter, then fair enough. But they're not evolving, in my opinion. I don't see any real evolution from this team that's playing now to what played in the World Cup. And Sam Roberts summed it up really nicely on Twitter. He did a great tweet. It was a long one, but it's well worth a read. There was an image that went round of Freddie Stewart in the air. I don't know if you saw this one, mate. And it's photoshopped him about 12 foot off the ground, and people thought it was real and people stuff. And Sam Roberts made the point of photoshopping is kind of what England need at the moment, because they're not pretty to look at. Again, like your point about the Aviva, the Twickenham in the first half, I was like, can someone tell the crowd that the game has started? Like, of course, they started singing Swing Low eventually, and I wish they'd gone back to being silent. But they're not an attacking side. And if you look at how Steve Borthwick played when he was coach of Leicester, they weren't an attacking side either. That's not how they played. This is England. What we're seeing now, what we've seen in the World Cup, this is Steve Borthwick's England. This is what they're always going to be like, in my opinion. And their players aren't that good, in my opinion. I think the like I said, the disparity, they've played Italy and Wales first up with the two weakest teams in the Six Nations. And they've won those games by a total of 5 points? Less, maybe? Again, if you look at, I think it was Simon Gleave did his stats bit about the what do you call it? The handicap, the bookies handicap, and how teams are comparing. And England are underperforming their handicap against the two weakest teams in the Six Nations by 21 points so far. Now, if you look at expected points, we spoke about it last week, and I've spoken to Ian, aka Robbie Kino, who knows a lot about this stat, and it's a lot of people don't think it's going to be the future. But according to expected points, England should have scored 30 points in this game. They scored 16. Like, so for me, this is just England. I've gone on a bit there, mate. What's your thoughts on England? Am I being harsh? Is there a project here that I'm just not seeing? Do I just not get it?
No, I'd agree with most of the things you say. Really, I do think they are still, a kick heavy team. They play nothing in their own half. They will always kick it. In attack, when they're in the opposition's 50, I just feel like sometimes I see them trying to throw a few more passes, create phases, and make some nice plays. But I think we've seen example after example in the opening two rounds that they kind of run out of options, and their go-to is just to make a little chip through or try to gain territory that, maybe wasn't really on. Maybe they shouldn't have held it or tried something a little bit more ambitious. But I think you're right. Like this is how Borthwick wants his team to play. They're not going to play like Ireland ever, I don't think. And I think you made a good point on the players. If a Lions squad, if we were to pick a Lions squad or a Lions starting 15 today, how many English players would be in that team? I don't know if there'd be any. And obviously, a lot of that is to do with how well Ireland are playing at the moment. But I really don't think that, England are maybe there. And that was a fascinating, piece that you did online where you just kind of spoke about, just the age profile of a lot of these players. They're not, I'd see Wales and I've seen them throwing a lot of young guys in there. And I think that's exciting, getting them that exposure, getting them that experience. And just maybe one final point in this game. I know we spoke kind of earlier on the pod about not complaining about kicking and maybe just trying to understand it more. And especially, if pundits were to do that, we'd all be in a better place. But for me, it is frustrating the way teams like England are essentially just have an extra set piece now at ruck time where they fire about 6, 7, 8 forwards into the ruck. The opposition don't compete, and you see some players literally on their knees, and you see these caterpillars, and the refs giving them the 9. Like at one stage, the ref called use it, and Alex Mitchell was literally given 9 seconds. Like, and the frustrating thing is, like, I hate just calling for change and just like we need to rip up the law book and make the game simpler, blah blah blah. A lot of the times, if you actually just enforce the law that's there, like, so if if they did enforce the 5-second rule, that would speed up the game. It would take away from that. And also, Tim O'Connor, who was a Munster fan and a barrister, he's very prominent on Twitter. He did, correctly point out recently as well that, you have to make an effort to stay on your feet at ruck time. So again, that's an area that referees could police better, and they could certainly ping a lot of teams, for players who don't stay on their feet. So I think there are existing laws there that if they were just enforced, that would maybe take away from these rucks. They do slow the game down. Again, I don't mind kicking, but it's just like seeing scrum halves been given like time to even stick their hand in the ruck, just to tap the ball a little bit, then get their left foot, then get their right foot in, and set up these perfect set piece.
Clear tactic from England, and this is why I say that this is Steve Borthwick's England. They put the result first, performance second. And like I say, if you're winning, fine. And if I was an England fan, God forbid, I'd be like, cool, we won. But like it's in that second half, especially in the second quarter, England killed the game by going slow. And if you look at the scrums, I don't know if anybody else saw this, the referee would shout crouch, and Wales would crouch, and then it would be literally like 1, 2, 3, 4, then England would crouch. And we don't do ref chat, but for me, it was on the referees to say, speed up, lads. Like the second or third time that they did, like, when I say crouch, please. And so it was a tactic from England. You can call it shithousery. It wasn't illegal. They didn't do anything illegal. But then again, this is England. And I think this is what they're going to be while Steve Borthwick is in charge.
Yeah. And I think, again, this isn't having to go at refs. This is clearly something that referees know is happening. It's certainly something World Rugby knows happening, and they're obviously just letting it go. It's just like the feed into the scrum. The scrum half, no scrum half puts it down the middle. Like they all feed into the second row's feet. So it's just for whatever reason they're turning a blind eye to. Well, you see the odd decision, I think, in domestic comps where the ref will blow it up if the scrum half takes more than 5 seconds. But yeah, just an interesting takeaway for me. But there was another major international competition, we'll call it, on this weekend, and that was the Rugby Europe Championship, and it was round 2. You got a chance to catch a lot of these games, and do you want to take us through maybe some of the results for the weekend?
Yep. Huw? Yeah. Okay. So Georgia beat the Netherlands. I'm not going to do that every time. That's the last time I'm going to do it, I promise.
That's the end of
that. 31 points to 3. The Netherlands were actually 3-0 up at one point. Right. So there's something weird about this game. So they showed an aerial view of like the facility that the game was played in. There was a lovely, luscious green pitch on one side and a really baked out yellow pitch on the other side. And the game was played on the yellow pitch. I don't know whether that's because of the stand capacity or something like that. This game wasn't played in the game that Black Lion played in for their European games. Yeah, it was played in the grounds that Black Lion played in the Super Cup, the Rugby Europe Super Cup. Okay, I can believe you if you tell me that Georgia versus Netherlands maybe isn't the biggest draw in the world. Cool. I just thought that was a little bit odd. Like I said, the Netherlands went 3-0 up, but Georgia came romping back, and it was a lot of very nice. I didn't mean to do that time, I promise. There was a lot of very nice backs tries. Wingers especially got a lot of joy. And Georgia even managed to get a penalty try from a rolling maul at the end, despite being down to 13 men at the time. So Georgia doing Georgia stuff, I guess. I think they're still hot favourites to win this title again this season, and it was kind of a comfortable one for them in the end. Romania beat Belgium 31 points to 18. Again, Belgium went 6-0 up, and it was a really quite cagey first half. In the second half, early in the second half, there was a really great finish by Manamua, the Romanian winger. He did really well to get over the line. But again, Romania got 2 men in the sin bin, which is a bit of a theme of this weekend. It comes up in a couple of games. And Belgium got back to 26-18. So it was really tight, and Romania didn't score their last try to make it 33-18 until the clock was in the red. So Belgium looking surprisingly competitive. I don't think anybody was expecting this. Maybe there were some Rugby Europe super fans who did see this coming, in which case fair play. But I think for a lot of people who were looking at this from the outside didn't expect Belgium to be doing so well. So fingers crossed that continues. Portugal beat Poland 54-7. Francisco Isaac was on co-coms for this, which was a nice surprise when I tuned in. I didn't realise. Just generally, the commentary for all of Rugby Europe has been great. There's a lot of commentators that you would know from covering club matches, and the English. I'm talking specifically about the English language versions here, so apologies everybody. But really enjoying the coverage and how educated and enthusiastic these commentators are for these games. And shout out to our friend Francisco as well. There was 3 tries in the first 10 minutes. Unfortunately, one of those was Poland's only try, and it went all a bit downhill from there. It wasn't the most, again, packed out game. Again, the stadium only had 3 sides, and 2 of the sides didn't have anybody in it. And it was one of those pitches where it was played in the middle of a running track, so there's a running track between the stands and the pitch. I'm sure there'll be much bigger games played in Poland this season. But it was a very comfortable win for them. It was 33 points to 7 at half time. Their scrum half, Martins, got a double, and the commentator referred to him as eel-like in his elusiveness from tacklers. There was a red card for both teams after a bit of a scuffle, so it finished 14-14. Full time appeared to have been blown, according to the TV clock, at 77 minutes. I don't know. The ref's got a watch on his wrist, so we'll go with what he said. And I just wanted to shout out Vasco Batista for having a great name and scoring a try. I think we need WWE-style walk-ons in rugby, personally. And then, imagine for substitute. You can have it for substitutes as well. Like a game is going one way, and then you go, "My God, that's the Kitsoff music," and he's coming on. Or the Oxen Che music as he comes on to change the scrum. Can you imagine? Write this down. We changed rugby.
Not for me.
Oh, come on. Right. This is because respect the kicking. Anyway, Spain versus Germany then. So a lot of people might have seen the clip of the pitch invasion at full time from Spain. I don't know why they did that. It finished a bonus point victory to Spain. I don't know if Spain got something from this game. Someone tweet me if there was something special on it, or they were just generally really happy about the rugby. I don't know. Do you know, mate?
I don't, but I believe Tier 2 Rugby, that Twitter account, did share a piece on this and said that this is not the first time that's happened after one of their games. So maybe it's just what they do.
Fair play to them. Some of the tries they scored were really nice, and especially their centres showed a lot of pace. Really ripped through Germany at times. And like I said, it was a bonus point victory. Right, let's talk some women's rugby then. Do you want to take us through the PWR, Enda?
Sounds good. So a crowd of 3,000 people witnessed Saracens overcome Harlequins 29-24 at the StoneX
Bumper crowd
Stadium.
for the StoneX.
It was. And look, this is actually a record attendance for a women's fixture at StoneX, so I think that was really good to see. Elsewhere, Leicester Tigers beat Loughborough Lightning, Exeter thumped Sale Sharks, and Gloucester Hartpury beat Bristol. Gloucester Hartpury are just 1 point behind Saracens at the top of the table. Unfortunately, there was no Celtic Challenge rugby this weekend, but the playoffs are coming up this weekend. But let's maybe move on to all things French rugby and go through the weekend's Pro D2 action, Huw.
Yeah, no top 14 this weekend, but Pro D2 was back, and Vannes also back. Vannes top. Hooray! They beat Aurillac 40 points to 6. Ooh, bit of a beating there. So they had lost top spot to Provence, but Provence lost in midweek. But if you listen to the Friday Breakfast Show, you would already know that. And so Vannes are now back top, and Béziers are up to second. They had a very narrow 37 points to 34 win over Montauban. Grenoble are on a 3-game losing streak, which a lot of people were expecting them to start pushing for the playoffs a few weeks ago, but that doesn't seem to be happening. They lost to Mont-de-Marsan, or Sapiac team, or whatever they call themselves on Twitter. Right, more cross-border rugby. There was some big games in cross-border this weekend, weren't there?
Yeah, so we know Japan Rugby League One rolls right off the tongue, but there was, the final round of the inaugural cross-border rugby. So this is essentially not really a competition. It's kind of like it wasn't that, like it's not some brand new formalized competition, but it is, I think the start of a relationship between Japan.
I feel
Rugby
like
League
New
One
Zealand
and-
rugby is trying to take credit for Japanese rugby. I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah, so it's basically, the Super Rugby franchises from New Zealand taking on, some of the teams from Japan League Rugby. Japan, oh my God, I can't say it. Anyway, so in the final round of this thing, it's actually really interesting online as well. They keep referring to it as the cross-border rugby, which doesn't really sound right. So I just call it cross-border rugby, which I think has a nicer ring to it. Anyway, the Blues beat Yokohama Cannon Eagles 57-22, while the Chiefs beat current Japan Rugby League One champions Kubota Spears 35-30. Then another interesting game happened in the weekend where Bristol played Crusaders. So after a narrow loss to Munster, the Super Rugby champions got back to winning ways by beating Bristol 31-14 in front of over 18,000 fans at Ashton Gate. Then
So I think
English,
that's URC Best League confirmed. Then is how I'm reading it.
Basically, that's what Caelan S Rugby will have you believe anyway, and I think he's right. In the English Championship, Ealing smashed Cornish Pirates 40 points to 12, while in the other championship game of the weekend, Bedford beat Caldy, and they are now up to third. Ealing are still on top with 10 wins from 11 games. Then in the AIL Division 1A, bottom side Dublin University came up just short against Cork Con in a game that finished 19-17. Clontarf are 2 points ahead of Cork Con in the table after beating Ballynahinch 45-25. What's going on in the Welsh Prem?
So Newport got a big win over RGC. They sit 15 points behind Llandovery in the table. Llandovery got an even bigger win away to Swansea. But Newport have got 2 games in hand. So they could close that to 5 points. And if you're 5 points behind, it's anybody's game. But the two top teams obviously go on to play the final. I think Llandovery are still favourites, although Newport are a great watch. They're a very entertaining team. So if you ever see them being streamed on YouTube or something, definitely tune in. Oh, and there was also a friendly between Scarlets and Exeter. I won't tell you what happened because I'm a Scarlets fan. Anyway, let's go into the TV guide.
Right. So the best league is back this weekend. We got some cracking games going up, particularly in South Africa. The Lions are hosting the Bulls and the Sharks are hosting the Stormers.
Didn't the Lions and the Bulls just play?
They did, but it was held in Pretoria. So this one, the Lions are at home.
Okay.
What else do we have going up this weekend? We have Rugby Europe Championship round 3. Also, if you're really a rugby nerd, you're going to know about Super Rugby preseason games that are being streamed for free on New Zealand Rugby Plus, NZR Plus. Hurricanes are taking on Moana Pacifica at 1:30 Friday morning. And also the Blues are hosting the Chiefs at 3 a.m. on Friday morning as well. Then we have Premiership Rugby. Yeah, so Premiership Rugby Cup finals coming up this weekend. I believe it's the semi-finals. We have Celtic Challenge, as I already mentioned. The playoffs are coming up on Saturday. So far, there's only one top 14 game confirmed as televised. That's Cast v Toulon on Sunday, but hopefully there'll be more announced towards the end of the week. And finally, don't forget to tune in to our Friday morning mini pod to get the latest rugby news and a run through of every televised fixture this weekend. That's it for me, Huw. Any final words from yourself?
Not from me. Thank you so much for the support this week, everybody. And if we get another couple of subscribers to our Substack, which you'll find in the Linktree link below, you'll make us very happy. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.